So last time I had you on, man, we talked a little bit about Roe v. Wade. So before we get into like discussing this film, which I definitely want to do, it would be silly for me to not to talk about the Roe versus Wade decision and what's going on. Because let me be honest with you, last time you were on, you made the comment, we were talking about the abortion issue a little bit, and you made the comment that the church is not ready for, if Roe v. Wade ever gets overturned, the church is not ready to take on the responsibilities that are necessary. And I'll be straight up with you. I never in my lifetime thought that was going to be a thing. And I don't know that you did at the time either. I don't know. I'm not going to speak for you. But yeah, it seemed like fantasy land, you know, like, and yeah. So I can be real when I tell you that it wasn't my faith that overturned this Roe v. Wade thing, because it was just kind of off my radar, you know. Yeah. I never thought that this would be a discussion we'd be having, you know, especially 2 years later. But can you, first of all, is it okay to celebrate this as the church? Is it okay for us to celebrate this overturning?
Yeah, I think it's, man, for those of us that have been contending for it in prayer for a long time, and when you see your prayer answered, I think absolutely it's time to celebrate. You know, this is a huge victory for our culture. You know, it's a victory because it's on God's heart, man. He hates the shedding of innocent blood. You know, and if you follow God and you're into the Bible, then this is, you know, it's the foundation of our beliefs.
Yeah,
and you're seeing. Especially at a time when our culture has been seemingly sliding so far the opposite direction, for this to happen in the midst of all this crazy gender fluid stuff and nobody knows who they are, what they are, to see this go this other direction. I mean, it's like, whoa, there's hope for America.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's hope for prayer, right? So a foundational thing that we put like into who we are, right? Prayer is so important. I think, as you alluded to, when something moves because of our prayer, I feel like we're really doing an injustice if we don't show thankfulness, you know, and we don't show praise when that happens. And so, you know, there's
100%.
Inside of me, man, was such, I mean, first of all, it came out of nowhere for me. I don't know. I'm not too terribly into politics, but when that leak happened, were you expecting that? Like, were you expecting a soon move, or was there a date scheduled for this to be looked at, or what? You know,
to be honest with you, I personally had been kind of checked out of so much media stuff because of how negative it's been over the last couple of years. But I mean, I was pressing for the election of Trump, the first round. I'm not a big Trump guy, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But I knew that he was going to be in position to elect some Supreme Court justices that had the potential to do this. And so that was almost my whole reason for saying vote for Trump, you know? Yeah. And so I knew it was a possibility, but for it to come down this year, it really kind of came out of nowhere for me personally, because I wasn't so dialed into the political conversation around the Supreme Court.
Yeah. So I want to talk just real quick, and I don't want to stay on this the whole time. So thank you for indulging me in this, but I think it's such a big deal. And you were a voice, and I shared it last time, but you were the reason I voted for Trump, because I heard the message you gave. I was in the same boat. I wasn't a big Trump guy. I felt like I was in this place of, you know, voting for the lesser of two evils, and we always hear about that.
That's always going to be the case, by the way.
Yeah, it is. And but hopefully it was that message you gave that was like, if you're going to vote for one thing, and that was like, wow, that does separate people pretty quick, right? Like I can do that. I can vote on the side of life. And I don't know. I mean, we did see, again, for some of us that aren't like so politically inclined, you know, when 2020 came and Trump steps out of office, you know, I don't know, if I'm not too in tune with politics, I don't really know that he did a whole lot for life. But now you look at it with the Supreme Court situations and people that are in tune of like, that's exactly what he did, right? He put something in place that was going to move on the side of life. And I like to say on the side of the church, like that's where we're at, man. So in your view, because, and I don't know if you're still out of touch with the media and with social media, because I am at the moment kind of out of social media, but I took a peek. I stepped into the dungeon for a short time, and I noticed so much of the church pissed and angry. And I say the church, Christian people in my life stepped up and kind of came out of the closet on the side of death and destruction, and I had no idea. So why do you think that so much anger is flaring up right now because of a life momentum?
Deception.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the only thing I can come up with, because the left has done such a good job of framing the issue around a woman's right to have control over her own body.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so then it feels like, oh my gosh, we're taking freedom away from somebody, which is what America's about. And they're just totally neglecting that other life in the womb. Like, what about that life? What about the freedom of that life?
Yeah.
And to me, it goes back to the Constitution. You know, even biblical people that don't fully follow the Bible, we can still point to the Constitution.
Right.
And go, we hold the Declaration of Independence and say we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, the first one, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And so I think it just comes back to deception, a lack of education of our Declaration, founding fathers' desires, and then for Christians, a biblical framework of God's, you know, what God believes about life, you know. And so it just shows that, man, I think a lot of the church hasn't been talking about it, for one. Like, if the church had been talking about this issue, then a lot of believers would be grounded in a biblical framework. But so many people are afraid to touch this issue because so many people in the church have had abortions. And so I would address the issue when I spoke. Miller would have me talk about it. He's like, this has been a thing on your heart. You speak about it, bro. Yeah. And I can come from a context of shamefully, a girlfriend in high school had an abortion. So I've been on that side, and the grief and the shame of all that. I ran for political office in 2010, and the second largest abortion clinic in America was in my district. During that season, my mother confessed to me that she went to an abortion clinic to have me aborted, but somebody said, I don't see it in your eyes. Why don't you go think about this? Wow. And that voice caused her to walk outside the clinic, stop and think, and I'm here because someone lifted their voice. Wow. That's so good. So on the one issue, I've got no right to judge anybody for the decisions they make. Right? So that's between them and God, but the Bible is very clear about this issue. So there's grace and mercy for those that have had abortions. And so I don't want to shame people into that. That being said, I can't bow from the truth. And I know the power of being able to speak truth in a dark season, but with compassion and love as best as possible without people feeling condemned. Yeah. Because unfortunately, back to the church not lifting their voice and pastors not speaking about this because they're afraid. And so now we're seeing the results of that culturally.
It's so weird to me how it shifted to, like, I mean, some of those Facebook posts that I noticed were friends that were like, man, I hope all you Christians, and it was so much vitriol because I had no idea, you know, just this, I hope all you Christians are prepared to open up your wallets and take care of these women. And I'm like, when has the church never been prepared to take care of women? You know, like the church is the one taking care of people. It just is. Yeah. I'm sorry, it is. And totally. I've got, you know, I've had my issues with the church, quote unquote, in the past, but it's like all of a sudden it's like, man, I hope you Christians are ready to be who you say you're going to be. And one of the verses that kind of came to my heart was Hosea 4:6. You know, the people are being destroyed and are dying for a lack of knowledge. And so I do feel like there's something about this issue, and just life in general. It's just, there's a lack of knowledge. And so I wonder, and real quick, do you agree with this, that there are some issues, you know, Christianity as a religion is based on, you know, loving God and loving people, and people are a big, you know, Jesus came for people. Yeah. It's centered around people, but at some point, isn't our devotion to God and life greater than people's opinions and people's thoughts?
It has to be.
Yeah.
Or we're going to be tossed to and fro by every emotion, every person's thought, where everybody is a law unto their own self and desires, right? And so I think that's why we need the anchor of the Bible that we can all ground ourselves in and point back to. Otherwise, it's like, there was a time, I forget the scripture, but it says everyone was doing what was right in their own eyes. Yeah. And when that's the case, I mean, you're in a pantheistic kind of crazy world where there's a 300 million gods like India, and everybody's doing their own crazy thing.
Yeah.
And so,
and we're heading to a moment, right? That just like the days of Noah, I mean, we're heading to that place. And
totally.
So I do feel like, I love people. I love women. I'm surrounded by them, bro. I've got 3 daughters.
Yeah.
I've had 2 sisters. Yeah. I've grown up with women in my life. I love them. But at some point it's like, man, they don't know, they don't understand the God that I understand. They don't understand God's love the way I understand it. And I'm going to stand for them when they're not standing for themselves almost too. And I feel like that's the church's responsibility a little bit now. So
no, it is. I've got friends that run crisis pregnancy centers, and they walk with women for years after they decide to have their baby. And even some of them that don't, and they end up aborting, or hopefully they'll put it for adoption. They'll abort. They do post-abortive care with these people to walk with them through their trauma, because it scars their hearts,
Yeah. And that's where it's evident to me that this is not a Democrat versus Republican thing, bro. This is a good versus evil, because what are the targets right now for Antifa and some of these crazies is the churches and crisis centers, right? They're lighting them on fire.
Yeah.
The very things that are left to like stand and help, like there's, I hope the churches are ready to help. Well, don't go burn them down. First of all, that would be a good thing. But I feel like more than ever, man, this is such a light versus dark thing. And I feel like, that the implications spiritually for what's going on. And again, I think it's okay for the church to breathe and like not rest, because there's so much work that needs to go into this, but to celebrate, right? I see the goodness of the Lord right now in the land of the living, and like, I'm okay. And this isn't celebrating and like gloating over any woman that's made a decision. This 100%. Is like, God loves life. He loves life, and I'm standing on the side of life. Yeah,
for sure.
Yep. So we won't hit any more on that. I appreciate you for going there with me. I felt it was cool because you and I talked about it a little bit before.
We did, and I hope I'm wrong on that assessment that the church isn't ready for it. But I think because it hasn't been talked about in a lot of churches, that a lot of churches aren't prepared. I know that there's some that are. There's some that are like, man, we're ready to adopt. They're running adoption campaigns already in their churches and saying, let's go after this. Yeah. Let's go after the legislation and help reduce the cost of adoption, because it's $40,000 a baby. Who can afford that?
That's right.
And there's some churches that are going, hey, we're going to raise money so that whoever wants to adopt, we're going to pay for it.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people out there that want to adopt that just are not able. So hopefully the church is going to step up.
Okay, so we'll stick there for a minute. What is next? What's now that this is, and again, this didn't eliminate abortions, right? People that are in tune understand that this isn't like abortion's not illegal across the land.
Yeah.
What's next for the church in regards to life in this situation?
Well, I hope it's that they become the answer that so many, I think, women are struggling with. I think I hope that the church can release a message of fathers to step forward and to view women as daughters of God, and treat them with respect. Because if men take their rightful place, you're not going to have all these unwanted pregnancies.
That's good.
Yeah. Right? Because they're going to treat women with honor and value and respect, and not just want from them, but want the best for them. Yeah. So I think there needs to be an education in that regard. And then for those that do find themselves in those situations, if the church is going to step up to the plate and be those adoption centers and be those who are willing to take in those kids.
Yeah.
It has to be that way. Otherwise, you'll have a bunch of unwanted babies, or the other thing that's going to happen is you're going to have more, Jesus talked about sheep and goat nations.
Yeah.
You're going to have sheep and goat states in America. We're going to have all these people, from one paradigm flooding to one place, and people from another paradigm flooding to these other cities. And you saw that the beginning of that with the pandemic, right? People moving towards free states versus controlled states. People weren't flooding to California and New York. They were bailing out of those places. Right. Yeah. And so I think you're going to see a shift of that geopolitically around our nation, even more so. More divided businesses are starting to align that way as well. Right. Yeah. And so there needs to be a radical, I don't fully know the answer to that. I know he's called us to be, ministers of reconciliation, but that takes two sides to do that. So we have to initiate that, but we got a lot of work ahead of us.
Yeah. It's, for a lot of women, abortion is going to be less of an option, right? Which is a good thing. So we're not eliminating options. There needs to be other options that are highlighted and more accessible. And
well, I saw something the other day, and I need to look up the accuracy of it, but I know the president of France was mocking the overturning of Roe v. Wade. And I've heard in France it's much more difficult to get an abortion than it is even
it is. Yeah. Well, I've heard that we have some of the loosest policies in regards to abortion, which, right on par with China and some of the other ones too. So it's kind of gross, but God is moving on our behalf, bro. I'm a believer of that for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, it speaks to the perseverance of the saints to not grow weary in doing good, right? And I think when we read the Bible, we can see these things play out sometimes over centuries that these people are contending and praying. And then even in the hallmark chapter of our men and women of faith in Hebrews 11, it says those all died in faith without receiving the promises. They were contending for it, but didn't see it, right? And so I think we can take from that, but then also to see people like Lou Engle and these people that have been praying for 40, 50 years and to see their prayers answered because they didn't give up and they kept contending,
That's right.
It's a big lesson for me.
We should be very grateful for them. There's people that just give their life to evangelism. There's people that give their lives to certain things that aren't necessarily like highlighted on my heart necessarily. And I think it's, man, the linking arms with brothers and sisters who are passionate about something like this is pretty amazing. So
it is.
Yeah, we owe them a lot for sure. So
for sure, much honor.
So let's talk about something that. Not to say you weren't passionate about that subject, but I want to talk about something that you're very excited about. And it's this new film. Let's talk about this new film, bro, that you've put together working with Sean Feucht. Last time we talked too, you had not yet hit the road with Let Us Worship. You had just moved to, where were you at? Or are you still there?
I was in Thomasville, Georgia. Now I'm in Atlanta.
Okay. You had just moved to Thomasville fairly recently before we talked last time. And I remember recording our episode, and soon after you had decided to hit the road, pack up your family and hit the road with Sean Feucht a little bit. So let's talk about that adventure, man. What was that? What led you to that decision?
Yeah, we were moving from Thomasville to Atlanta, and our house wasn't ready yet because it was being remodeled. And so we went down to Tampa for a little while. I've got family in Tampa, and it was the middle of the lockdowns, 2020. It was September, and I saw Sean had been going around doing these worship protests across the country. And we've known Sean since probably 2006. He and his wife lived with my wife and I for a little while when they were first starting their ministries in Dallas.
Yeah.
And so we go way back, and I saw him doing a Let Us Worship event in Tampa, and I was like, bro, we're in Tampa. He's like, dude, you're here, get your wife, let's do worship, let's rumble,
Yeah.
And so we're like, all right, let's do this. And what was significant about it was, I remember the date, it was September 18th, and September 18th is a day of mourning for my family because it was my brother in 2017 committed suicide, and September 18th was his birthday, and he was from Tampa. So we're in Tampa. It's like the day of mourning for my family. We got this big, huge event in the middle of the pandemic, middle of the lockdowns, don't touch, 6 feet apart. Everybody's freaking out, fear magnified across the earth. And I go bring some flowers to my family and just to kind of console them. And then I went to prayer, and I was like, God, what's up with this? And I felt like he said this. I felt like he said, it's time to plunder hell on your brother's behalf.
Wow.
And I was like, man, I don't know what that means, but I like the sound of that a lot, because it's been such a place of pain. And I knew God was always going to flip the script on this some way. And a friend of mine, Michael Miller, pastor of the Upper Room, he said, God's going to give you a big sword from this situation. I didn't know what that meant either, but I held on to it,
Yeah.
And the first thing Sean starts talking about at the event was the very first Let Us Worship they did was on the Golden Gate Bridge, and how all these police were there because they were on suicide patrol because so many people were committing suicide in the midst of the lockdowns. And I was like, oh man, God, you're setting this up. Well, we do the event, people get saved, baptized in cattle troughs. I mean, there's thousands of people there. It was crazy. And then he hands the mic to me, goes, you got anything? And I was like, well, I thought this event was over, but I guess I'll go. Yeah. And the first thought that came to me was like, this is the land of Buccaneers. It's the land of pirates, Tampa. And I started sharing about that. And I said, well, there's a godly version of that thing. The godly version is when Jesus died, he went down into hell and he plundered hell and he took back the keys of death and Hades, erupting graves, so those could have life that are bound in darkness. And I started sharing the story about my brother and how he'd been bound in darkness. And it was his birthday. He was from Tampa. He committed suicide. And I was like, man, I just don't want to lose any more brothers and sisters to this. If you're struggling with suicide or depression, I want you to come down right here, right now. I want to break it off your life. I want to pray with you, love you, hug you, whatever. I was just like slobber cry, just passionate. And in that moment, all these men just come rushing to the front of the stage. And we're like hugging each other, weeping, praying, contending for life over each other. It was just this powerful moment, man. And this moment just like catches viral across the world, and people are emailing in saying they're feeling their suicide and depression break off their lives. And so I was like, man, I was just with my family, and I was like, let's just roll. Our house isn't ready. Let's just roll city to city. We ended up doing like 22 cities with Sean. I've got 3 kids, and we just were rolling. And people just started giving it. That same week, somebody had bought a 501c3 for me to have. I didn't even know why they were doing it. I was like, I don't even have a ministry. I don't know why you're doing this for me. And I got the bank account set up that week. And I didn't even put up a post about it. People just started giving to us. And I was like, well, I got this 501c3 set up. And it funded us to go do all these cities. And during that time, man, I was seeing every major narrative of 2020, whether it's the George Floyd riots, COVID lockdowns, whatever the issue may be. I was seeing the opposite of what the media was saying take place. I was seeing racial reconciliation take place. I was seeing these massive events. Nobody was getting sick. I was seeing it's not that people weren't getting sick, but in our events, it just wasn't happening.
Yeah.
And I was seeing people get saved and set free of suicide, depression, drug addiction, going into the hearts of where Antifa was rioting, et cetera, people getting saved. And Vice and Showtime came to Sean wanting to do a documentary about his story. And I said, well, we know how they're going to tell that story.
Yeah.
You're going to look like that crazy idiot Christian who's killing everybody and killing grandma, which no grandmas died.
Yep.
And so I said,
That's
bro.
not what I heard, bro. It's not what I heard.
Yeah. And so I said, bro, let me tell the story. Let me go after this. And so he was like, all right, well, let's see what happens. And I had a dream shared with a buddy of mine, and immediately it spoke to him, and he ended up giving $50,000 right away into this project, which got us, we got a trailer made. And the guy that I hired to be our editor had just been hired by Sony Films to be one of their primary film editors. But right when they hired him, they said, you got to take this jab and to work here. And he's like, nope, ain't going to happen. I'm not going to do it. And so they let him go. And that week we showed up with this job. And so I got one of Sony's premier editors working on my film because of a God thing,
Yeah.
And so, man, we started going around telling the story. And bro, I'm not joking when I say this film is powerful. I mean, it's already touching. People are already getting saved watching it. People are feeling strengthened, encouraged. They're being provoked, challenged. And we've got a theatrical release coming August 19th. And during this whole run, Rolling Stone magazine did an article about Sean Feucht, and they called him Jesus Christ Superspreader. and I was like, bro, that's exactly what you are. Superspreader of faith, hope, love. And I was thinking about, what do I call this film? Because I want, when people are clicking through like Amazon or Netflix, wherever this thing ends up landing, if they're an unbeliever and you see Let Us Worship, there's no way you're clicking on that.
No. Yeah.
So I was like, what's the wisest serpent version? Innocent as dove. But I was like, Superspreader. That's what we're going to call this thing.
Love it.
So I know they're going to click on that and be provoked into it. And then, man, we're not shy in the film, and we're not afraid. We interview a bunch of opposing voices, and we let their voice be heard in it. We don't make them look like idiots. We don't have a quick rebuttal to it. We let their voice just be stated, because the reality is it was a complex, confusing season that, man, there's valid points on both sides of the issue. And so we let those voices be heard. So if you're a skeptic or whatever, your walls drop, but then we show the power of God flowing through people's lives and them getting transformed. So at the end of the day, wherever you land, you can still land on the other side of the issue from where Sean was per se, but you'll still see God doing extraordinary things in people's lives in the midst of a lockdown, how God's still moving in the midst of all that.
That's so good. Yeah. I think it's important, man, for us to not be manipulators of the truth, and like on both sides. And that's where I feel like there's there's such a momentum right now for creators to just create the truth, and the truth will come out. And, you know, you look, I don't know if you've seen the, What is a Woman, you know, Matt Walsh's
great
thing. I haven't watched it yet. I want to, but I've seen clips, and I know that one thing that he does very, very well is he lets them speak. He lets their side speak words, and we get to decipher whether or not that's truth, you know? And, you know, most of that documentary is him asking questions and them answering the questions.
Yeah.
And I know these films are, go about things differently, I'm sure, but I think that I'm so glad that you said that and did that in regards to, you know, having opposing views on there, because again, if this is a time of good versus evil, those who have eyes are going to be able to discern, right? And,
totally.
And lead our families through the mess, and lead our communities, left or right, whichever side we need to go, or whichever direction we need to go. So how important is it, man, right now, for in this time, in chaos and in like just crazy time, probably the craziest time of my lifetime. That's probably a cliche for people to say, right? But it's true. And for me, how important is it right now for Christian creatives and for films like this to be released and to be put out there?
I mean, I'm biased because I'm in this world, but I think it's, if not the most important, one of the most important places for us to be right now. People are spending 8 to 11 hours a day in front of screens.
Yeah.
And we've been entrusted with the greatest stories the world has ever known, the stories that holds the keys to life and human flourishing. And we need to be able to tell it in a relevant, powerful, compelling way, and reveal the heart of Jesus to a generation. Because at the end of the day, he's the desire of the nations, and they need to be able to see that heart. But the media is controlled. The media, for the most part, you know, 91% of them are on the left and do not espouse to a Christian worldview. And so all that the world gets from what is a Christian is the Westboro Baptists, you know, it's showing our faults, our flaws, the fallen pastors, which, man, you know, we need to do better for one, you know, and they need to be exposed for what they've done.
Yeah.
But we need to, us as in the church, we need to not be afraid and go tell these stories.
Yeah.
You know, there's a quote by Daniel Coyle. He wrote a book called The Culture Code. And he says, stories are not just stories. They're the most powerful invention ever created for delivering mental models that drive behavior.
Wow.
Right. And so he's essentially saying we become what we behold. Right. It's a form of worship. And so we need to be telling these stories and getting them in front of people. And especially in times when there's chaos. Right. In the beginning, when the earth was formless and void, it was in a state of chaos. Then God said, let there be light. He began to speak light into darkness to help the world take shape and form. And that's why the church needs to be speaking up right now more than ever, so that that voice can be heard to shape the narrative of the culture. Because if we just try to play nice and sit back and think this is going to go away, it's not. Yeah, it's not. You know, this is the time to be able to raise your voice and create.
It's and you know, I believe there's such momentum, kingdom momentum behind things like this. You know, whether it's What is a Woman, 2,000 Mules. Superspreader, these types of things that are hitting specific topics that are big right now in the culture.
Yeah.
But big media is not going to take these on, right? Big media is not going to give you the truth behind a lot of these things. So these Christians have to rise up and like make a way, right? Yeah. Whether that's allowing your creative juices to flow, or whether that's financially funding someone who has the ability to do this, because without films like that, the truth is not getting out there. You know,
it's not. I mean, as a kid, you know, first of all, you've got people, like the stats of people leaving church right now in America. It's pretty dramatic, right?
Right.
And so where are these kids getting discipled?
Yeah.
Who's discipling them? It's what they're watching. And I'm example number one. I didn't grow up in the church. And so when I was a kid, my dream was to be in the mafia when I grew up.
Yeah.
It's because I grew up digesting Goodfellas and Scarface and Ghetto Boys and NWA, all this stuff.
Let's not act like that's not still a part of who you are, bro. Come on now.
Hey, I'm just heaven's OG. I just flipped the script. I still can be wild, but it's for the kingdom now.
That's good. That's good. That's good.
But my point being, that was what gave me my worldview. So we have to be telling those stories, and the church just hasn't valued it. We value like missions and digging wells in Africa and all this kind of stuff, which is super valid and super important.
Yeah.
But man, if we want to save this next generation, we got to be in front of their eyes.
Yeah. I mean, it's the truth that sets people free, man. So I feel like, it really is a battle for truth right now. Mm-hmm. And I think from the pulpit, I've been in a place fairly recently where I valued truth behind the pulpit so much that I was like, I can't be a part of where I'm at. I need to find a place that is,
dude, it's safety. It's like this anchor, and it's ancient. And it's in the midst of all this chaos. It's a place where our soul can rest in, right? He's the rock of ages.
That's right.
Yeah. And we need it.
Man, what are some, is this film done? Is this film complete?
Film's complete. We just sent it to get a DCP, which means that it's a format for theaters. We've got some pre-screenings coming up, July, I think 16th, we're going to be in Tulsa for 17th. And then I forget the dates exactly. 21st, we're going to be in Dallas. And then we've got Tampa on the 24th, 25th. We might be back in Fort Worth. We've got some premieres in LA in August. And then we're doing a premiere in Portland and Seattle too. Wow. Some of the wild places. So and then August 19th is like the official kind of launch date.
Explain this process for those that don't know. And I'm one of them.
Yes.
You're trying right now are you trying to get this into theaters? Is that how this works?
So what we're doing right now, we're trying to get it into theaters. And one of the things about theaters, a theatrical release, from a promotional standpoint, is it raises the value and awareness of the film so that when you take it to the distributor, whether it's Amazon, Netflix, or whatever, it has more value to it, right? Number one. Number two, for us personally, it helps us get the message out, and we can create a Let Us Worship environment inside the church. Have church inside the theater, inside the world. Because it's a lot easier for people to bring a non-believer, someone to a movie than it is to a church. Because you can say, hey, let's go watch this crazy super spreader guy.
That's right.
And then when you get in there, my heart is to have these crazy evangelists in the theaters that'll just stand up rogue after the movie and just preach the gospel right afterwards and have church in the theater.
So good.
And so our goal, I don't know if we're going to get there, but our goal is 500 theaters on August 19th. And so it's kind of a weekend showing, a weekend blast. We have some places it's 1 day, some places it's 2 days. Depending on pre-sales, we may have a week run in some other areas. And then depending on how it does, if we're successful in getting the word out and people show up, we can extend that. Well, we just move to streamers after that. We have about a 45-day window to move to streamers. We can't move to streamers until after that 45-day window because of some contractual stuff. And then the pre-screenings are just things that we do in little regions to stir up buzz and kind of promotions. And that way, people that come see it, they can talk about it and share about it and just build momentum up until that August 19th release date.
So how do you get this into theaters? Like, what's that process look like? Like you make a film, you obviously want it in more theaters, right?
Yes.
How do you go about doing that? Like, I'm in Wichita, Kansas. How can I see this?
Yeah, it's a great question. This is all brand new for me. I mean, I'm learning as I go. First film, right? So we got to connect it to a big marketing company who's done 100 films. The last film that they did that was pretty big was that Kurt Warner film. Yeah. What was it called? American Underdog or something like that.
Yep.
And so they saw it. They fell in love with the film, saw its power, and they connected us with some distributors. First one was like Fathom Events.
Yep.
They got scared from the title of the film, Superspreader. They want us to change it back to Let Us Worship. And we're like, we're not going to do that, and we're not going to make this milquetoast kind of a thing. And they're like, well, our theaters have worked really hard to try not to create Superspreader events, and we don't want to do all this. And so they were conflicted internally about it.
Yeah.
And so we're like, all right. So then this other group called Iconic, which is a newer distributor, they just distributed Kanye West's last documentary, and they weren't afraid of it. They said, we love it. Let's take it. Let's roll. Wow. And they do a lot of live event in theaters too, like UFC and all this stuff. So they're used to battles. It seems like they were just down to roll. And they sent the screener of the film out to several theater chains, and AMC and Cinemark said yes, they'd be willing to host it. Regal said no. Alamo Drafthouse said no, too political, too controversial. So, I mean, hey, at least some are saying yes, right? They're open to us do this. And I think, hopefully 2,000 Mules is paving the way for some of that, because it's controversial, but they made a ton of money. They had a bigger promotional mechanism behind them. So Iconic is the one that the distributor getting out into theaters. And so right now they're calling all these theaters in the cities where Sean Feucht has had events and negotiating deals and all this kind of stuff so that we can have this event on those nights. And we have some marketing stuff about to hit social media, hopefully later this week, to start promoting it and pushing it out. So we don't have the exact cities locked in just yet, because that's part of the distributor's job.
So I'm probably asking you questions I should be asking the distributor, but if I have an AMC, do I get this film, or do we know?
What do you mean?
Like I have an AMC in Wichita, Kansas.
Yeah.
Doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to have it in my city, correct?
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
We're hitting markets where Sean has first of all had an audience already.
Yep.
And if that makes it that way, but we're looking also for churches that can call in and request it in their cities. Hey, we want it to come to our city.
Yeah.
We have a link on Sean Feucht's website. Sorry, on the film website, superspreaderfilm.com. Or if you're a church, you can click on request the film in your city. You put it in whatever theater you have, and our distributor is going to see that, boom, and go, okay, hey, can we get it there?
Okay. I want that link. I want to put that in the show notes if you're cool with that.
Yeah, for sure.
That'd be awesome. So is there anything we can do right now, man, to help you like in this? And don't give me a cookie cutter answer. Just pray. even though we have discussed that prayer is working in America for sure. What's some things that the church can do right now to help you or this type of thing move forward?
Yes. So I think one of the biggest things for, like you mentioned this, for creators to be able to get their vision out and forward is resources. The Medici family funded the Renaissance. We still need money for marketing dollars. We got about half of our budget raised. We're moving forward in faith that money's going to come in. Even our distributor and our marketers are moving forward in faith with us, thinking that it's going to come, right?
Wow. So
we need probably another $150,000.
Okay.
Practicals. And you can go to letusworship.org. There's a give button there. We also, if you have a church in your area and you want a screening, go to superspreaderfilm.com. There's 2 different websites, superspreaderfilm.com, and click the link at the bottom and request it to come to your city. Pick a theater in your area, AMC, Cinemark, if there is. If there's not one of those, if you're a small town, request it to come to your church. We'll do church screenings as well.
Yeah.
But we prefer theaters. We want to do it in the marketplace. We want to have the church be able to bring people that don't know Jesus, come watch this movie. They're going to get touched. I guarantee it. It's powerful. It's done at a high level. It will sit and compete with any documentary that's out there, guaranteed. And this one is a little different because it has an emotional, spiritual dimension to it that every other doc that I've seen out there does not have.
Yeah.
And so it's going to hit at a deeper level, whether you're a believer or not. You're going to get touched.
Yeah. The trailer was superb, by the way.
Thanks, bro.
So that was, I'm a big trailer guy. I could sit and literally watch trailers all day long of what's coming up. And it hit all the things that I'm looking for. I mean, as much as we say we want to get off social media because of the Discord, I think a lot of us are kind of get maybe a little bit excited about political discourse, and it definitely hits that drum, but it's I don't know. I keep saying the word. I keep saying the word momentum, but there's such kingdom momentum right now, man. Yeah. And not that the kingdom ever hit pause or ever stopped, but I feel like when you get on that train, you feel it and you experience the momentum that the kingdom has. And so it's it's just a season. It's a season of advancement. There's times when you pull back and you gain strength and strategy and everything else. And right now we're just in an advancing season. Yeah.
So that's it. It's time to move forward.
And there's an anointing to go too for some people, right? And so I feel like
there is.
when you're doing something like this, like creating a film or, whatever you're doing, I think there is an anointing to go that God can release on you. And so I think you've probably experienced that. Was there a time that you felt that of like, I've got to put this out? Like I've got to actually make this and move forward with this?
Yeah, from the beginning. And then I think there was an impetus to do it fast because of the nature of the content. Are people going to be tired of hearing about COVID? Is that thing done? That being said, so I talked to a guy in my gym, and he's a director. He does 30 for 30 films for ESPN.
Yeah.
And I was showing him the trailer and stuff and how it got into theaters, August 19th. And he's like, when did you start this film? And I said, April of last year. He's like, so you're telling me you got a film from conception into theaters in less than a year and a half? And I go, yeah, is that good? He goes, it's kind of like a guy just starting to jog said he ran a sub 4-minute mile. This is what he said. And he's like, yeah, that's good. That's crazy. He's like, I've never just heard of that. So
that's awesome.
God's wind is on it to blow. We've had the press. It's been hard. Every step of the way, the finances, getting this thing going, the resistance, every phone call every day is fraught with challenges, but when you're called to it, you just press through and keep going because God's called you to do it.
How cool is it to like, I mean, this is for Sean, right? I mean, this is Sean's mission, and you get to do this for him. How cool is that to like, put something out really, dedicated to him, right?
Yeah,
a little bit. I mean, that sounds like maybe surfacey, but this is like you're honoring someone's passion,
honoring their passion, their sacrifice. But his story is my story. It's our story. It's the American story of religious freedom and freedom, right? So he's the vessel, but it's all of our story. But he was the spearhead that took risks and flack and death threats like none of us have taken, in the balls and courage to do what he did in the midst of the entire planet being locked down and be the only musical tour on the planet doing what he did.
It's good.
Tremendous faith and courage. And so absolutely want to honor that. The challenge in it, because you want to honor him, but you're putting opposing voices into it.
Yeah.
Right. And so for him, very challenging to have that done. And we had to talk with him through it, but he agreed to it ultimately at the end of the day. That takes courage.
Yeah.
That takes grit, and resolve,
Well, and I know how cautious he was throughout this process too. I heard early on, I saw a post that he made about, I think he learned his lesson pretty quick that I'm not going to talk to everybody. I'm not going to talk to every media outlet that wants to, and that's, you kind of explained that's where the heart of this came from, was not wanting someone else to tell the story, right? But you're going to tell the story. But I think he seems to be a guy that has been very cautious with who he allows to speak on his behalf. And so I think allowing you to do this, I think it's an honoring thing for you too, man. I mean,
I'm super honored. I'm super honored that he trusted me, because I'm, first time filmmaker, and to trust, this is like the most critical moment of his life, most impactful, important moment of his life, and allow us to tell it and trust us to do it. I'm super honored for that. And thank God we pulled it off. It's a really good film. The first cut we did was horrible. I was so scared.
Probably not wanting to show a whole lot of people.
Oh man, I was scared. I was like, Lord, help us. But it's a rough draft of anything, right? And so they're always bad, the first draft. You're just getting your thoughts out. You got to organize them, shape them. And man, I'm so proud of how it's turned out. My team, my director, Josh Frainer, unbelievable. He's, risked his life and his career and his credentials to make a film like this. Tom Isaacson, my editor, same thing. These guys, man, they just came through and just executed excellently, but kept the spirit of God in it and towed that line of not being a promotional piece for Sean, and really telling the story of spirit and truth, get the heart of it, but not shy away from the hard issues,
Was he filming this thing from the very beginning? I mean, was that did he have a desire to maybe get this story out there from the very beginning?
Sean?
Yeah.
Well, he had a camera guy at all the events, but they were doing it just, I think, recording what was happening and using it for promotional pieces. I don't know how much he was in his head thinking documentary.
When were you thinking documentary? I mean, did you decide to start, okay, we're going to start filming this a little different now that we're...
No, I mean, it was kind of a ways, probably like halfway through the 22 cities, somewhere along there. And, I had to convince Sean that we could do it, for one, because we didn't have a lot of experience, and even my director has been mostly in the commercial world. And so he was taking a step out too, but this is the divine setup, how God orchestrated these relationships to come together. There was a real hand of God on it, And so I think that we were able to lean into, okay, this is divine, God setting this up. We can lean into that aspect of it, even though we're all navigating new territory together.
Yeah, that's so good. Has this experience spawned other future things for you in regards to filmmaking? Are you getting some juices going? Or are you strictly focused on this right now?
I'm super focused on this right now, but there are opportunities that are already presenting themselves by people that have just seen the trailer and some of the people that have seen the screening.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's some really unique things that are kind of opening up. So I'm just praying through it. But
go ahead and tell us all of them. Go ahead.
I wish I could.
No, that's exciting.
I'm plowing through to make this thing successful, because here's another unique element, is because this thing touched people around the world. There's a potential for an international, impact.
Yeah.
Right. And one example, I talked to a guy, I showed the trailer at the Upper Room in Dallas, and this guy comes up to me who's from Australia and goes, bro, he's like, we've been locked down for 3 years. He goes, there's 900 suicides a month. I couldn't leave my home for 6 months. He goes, now they track me on an app because I didn't get a vaccine. Me and 15 people in my area were tracked. We can't go into certain places. They mark us. He goes, every church shut down. There was no movements like this in Australia. There was no hope. There's no hope there. No hope. Would you please bring your film to Australia? Wow. And I was like, gosh.
Yeah.
And how many other places are like that, where the church just folded?
Yeah.
Yep. And man, so prayer, I do need prayer, but if anybody knows international distribution or has people in other countries that can help this, because that's a whole nother beast that we have to navigate. But so I know this film's going to have a life for the next couple of years. It's not just okay, let's get this thing out. So there's a bit of me that's going to have to keep nurturing this thing for some time to come.
Well, as long as there's discourse, there's going to be a place for this film, I think, huh?
Yeah, for sure. I think we also captured a moment in history that this is going to be a legacy piece for, I think, Christian universities, for students that are called to missions. And how do you respond in the midst of chaos when the government comes against you? What's your Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego moment in the fire? Are you going to fold? Or are you going to go stand in the fire and meet Jesus there?
Love it. That's so good. Well, get me all those links, man, when we're done here. I'd like to put those in there so that people can support. And this is very, very important. This is every single day in this moment, man. I just feel like it feels very fresh, doesn't it? I mean, it's just like we're in such a fresh time. And as easily as it is to get angry and discouraged, I think as we hit on early on with the Roe v. Wade news, it's so important for us, man, to celebrate. It's so important for us to remind ourselves how good God is. And I think ultimately that's what this film's going to do, is remind the church how good he is, man. How good he is.
Bro, I don't think what you just said can be overstated, the importance of that right now.
Yeah.
In Romans 1, it talks about people's foolish hearts were darkened because they didn't honor God or give thanks.
That's right.
Right. And so right now, every victory, let's honor God for it. Let's give thanks. That'll keep our hearts open so we don't get deceived and darkened. And so, man, if that needs to be a daily for us, bro. Thank you for that reminder.
Yeah. And it's, it is possible to celebrate and be thankful and keep moving forward. I think so many people think, oh, there's not time to celebrate. There's not time to be thankful. We got to keep plowing. It's like, you can do both. Like, we're actually called to do both, right?
Yes.
Like you enter his courts with praise and his presence with thanksgiving. And so we always talk about the presence. We want the presence. Well, there's thanksgiving in that place, man. And if we're moving forward in that, I mean, I just think more and more doors are going to open for the creatives. More and more doors are going to open for those people that want to impact the planet. So
who's a good model for that is talking about films, is the character in Braveheart, Stephen, the Irishman.
Oh yeah,
his own island.
Yeah,
he was they're in battle, but he's praising and thanking God. He's laughing, joyful, right?
That's so good, man.
That's the posture. We're in battle. We're in war. We're at war over life, our nation, identity, the church, everything. But staying grateful and thankful that we get to battle in this hour, that God's put us on the earth in our nation in this time to be the answers.
Yeah.
that's going to be infectious for people, and it's going to keep our hearts buoyant and open for God to flow through, man.
That's so good. It's up to us, man. It's up to me. The enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy. He's not going to steal the things that he did not give me. So this joy and this momentum is kingdom. The kingdom's moving forward. He's not going to steal that from us. He can steal the byproducts of those things if we don't act on them. But I think as long as we're staying thankful and grateful and moving forward, man, he's not going to steal what the Lord's trying to do. So
amen.
This is good, man. I'm thankful for you, bro. Thank you for plowing, man, for real.
Thanks, bro. I'm thankful for you.
I can't say that enough, that when I saw, and have you been talking about this film being made? I must have missed. I must have missed it. No. I saw the trailer, or you were talking about the trailer coming out, and I was like, holy crap, there's a film being made about this,
Yeah, no, I haven't been talking about it. I'm just so buried in it, bro. I feel like I haven't been able to make posts or anything. I've just been like plowing.
That's good.
I need to start talking about it. It's what I need to just start doing.
Well, I think the trailer set the expectation very, very high. So that's
good.
That makes for a good trailer, right?
Good. It does. No, my trailer guy's good, bro.
Yeah, it was good. It was intense. Edge of my seat. And it's funny because we know how this story ends, man. You know, we know what's coming. We know where we've come from. And this is a good story to tell, I think. So
let's keep telling his stories.
That's right.
Thank you.
Keep plowing, keep going. And anything we can do to help, let me know. I'm going to put the links in the show notes, guys. Go support what he's doing. This is a church effort, right?
This is our story.
That's right. Awesome, bro. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Proud of you. Keep plowing. You and your wife. Are you guys still okay? Is Let Us Worship still going, right?
It is still going.
I mean, you guys are still going, and I know Meredith.
We're not doing a ton with him. My wife's doing some worship stuff with him here and there. Yeah. But my main focus is this film.
Yeah.
Sorry to see my door stopper. I don't know if that was kind of loud.
No, you're good. Awesome, man. Thank you. We'll chat soon. I'll get you some links to this thing too. You can share it however you want.
All right. Thanks, bro.
Cool. Awesome, bro.
Talk
to you soon, man.
All right. Bye.
Bye.